This is the story of how hackers stole $81 million from a bank in Bangladesh. It was February 4th, 2016. When employees at the Central Bank of Bangladesh noticed that something was wrong, they were getting a ton of messages from commercial banks all over the country, asking them to clear a bunch of money transfers that had been requested by one of their member banks, the International Leasing and Financial Services Limited. The requests ranged from $2 million to $30 million. And to put that into perspective, the whole country only transferred an average of around $500 million per day. So this was a lot. The central bank called up International Leasing and asked what was going on. They got the biggest surprise of their lives. The person who picked up the phone said, "Hello, this is the managing director of International Leasing." But it wasn't the managing director. It was someone who had just gotten off a flight from Cyprus. He had stolen his friend's identity to plan the biggest bank heist in history. Let me explain. September 2015, the managing director of International Leasing and Financial Services Limited received a message from a business associate named Peter Chadwick. Peter told him that he had found a way for them to make a lot of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars. All they had to do was let him remotely access their SWIFT system so he could move some money around. But when the managing director turned the request down, Peter threatened to expose his bank's massive tax evasion scheme unless they agreed to work together. And even though the bank's chairman didn't believe Peter's threats, he still decided to play along just in case. At this point, Peter got on a plane and flew to Bangladesh, where he met with the bank's IT manager. There, they managed to install a program on the bank's computer, which allowed Peter to access its SWIFT system remotely. But before he could transfer any money, the bank's security team caught on and blocked Peter's IP address. So he left the country and eventually settled in Cyprus. Then a few months later, he contacted the bank again, pretending to be a cybersecurity expert who could fix their vulnerabilities. This time the bank took the bait and hired Peter for 2 weeks. He fixed their system and installed a new firewall, all while using his own people. Then he left again. But this time, before he left, he handed over a USB stick to the bank's IT manager, saying that it would help him get past the firewall he had installed. And just as Peter had predicted, the moment he left, the bank's system started sending error messages. It turns out that the USB stick had a bug in it that Peter used to reroute the bank's security protocols to his own server. From there, he could see everything the bank's employees saw and do anything they could do. He even had access to their internal network, meaning he could easily manipulate any data he wanted. And then finally, after a few more failed attempts, he was able to log in and change the bank's firewall settings. But the thing was, because Peter had set up the firewall in the first place, he knew exactly what to do. So he went to the SWIFT application and changed the access rights of several users, giving them admin privileges. With this, he could now send money anywhere in the world without being detected. He wasted no time and sent $2 million to the Philippines. A few days later, another $2 million, and then another one, and then several more. And each time he did, he would use the same account, making it look like one person was doing it. But as we mentioned earlier, the whole country only sends around $500 million per day. So these transactions raised red flags. The banks alerted the authorities, but by then, Peter had already sent $40 million to the Philippines. Even worse, he then tried to send $70 million more, but those transactions were blocked. When the banks realized what had happened, they contacted the Philippine banks and tried to recall the money. But by then, Peter had already moved it to casinos, where he gambled it away. In total, he managed to steal $81 million. Which is why when the Central Bank of Bangladesh called International Leasing to ask them about the transactions, they had no idea what they were talking about. See, Peter had given the bank's employees fake names and made them change their passwords. So when the bank called the number provided, it was Peter on the other side of the line. He acted confused and concerned, and even gave them the name of the person he supposedly sold the shares to, Muhammad Ali, a fake name he came up with. So the bank called the Bangladesh Securities and Exchange Commission to investigate. But when the commission called the number provided, it was Peter again, pretending to be Muhammad Ali. And the funny thing was, Peter knew a lot about Muhammad Ali, like too much. So when the commission asked him questions, he answered them correctly. He even agreed to meet with them to discuss the matter further. But when the meeting time came, the commission was met with a no-show. At this point, everyone was extremely suspicious. The banks, the commission, and even the police all thought that this was an inside job, even though it wasn't. And they were right. The police ended up arresting the bank's chairman, managing director, company secretary, and several others, while International Leasing was forced to pay back $64 million. But Peter never imagined that it would be so easy. To evade authorities, he had actually planned for this meticulously. After stealing the money, he flew to Nepal, where he stayed for 3 days. Then he flew to Malaysia for a week, then Thailand for 4 days, and finally Cambodia for 12 days. After that, he returned to Nepal and flew to France, then Monaco, and then finally St. Martin, where he has been ever since. And what's even funnier is that Peter has a criminal record, dating back to 1988 when he was convicted for running a credit card scam. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but served less than half of it. Then in 1999, he was arrested for trying to bribe a police officer. Later, he was also convicted for laundering money for an international drug cartel. Yet despite all this, he was free to travel all around the world until 2016, when he was finally placed on the FBI's most wanted list. Even then, he somehow avoided being caught for 5 more years, that is until February 2021, when he was finally arrested in Montenegro and extradited to the US, where he faces 30 years in prison. As for the rest of the stolen money, it's gone forever. The casinos won't tell anyone which employees pocketed the cash or where it went. And although the Bangladeshi government offered a reward for anyone who could find the money, nobody ever did. They tried to recover the money through the courts, but the judge ruled that it was too late to do so, and that's why.